Well, hey, friends, welcome back to Your Life, Your Story, Rise Up podcast. I'm your host, Jill O'Boyle, and I am so grateful that you are here. You know, if you are anything like me, you've probably had seasons in your life where you've held on so tightly to something, whether it's a dream, a plan, or even a sense of control, only to realize that holding on was actually keeping you from receiving what God has in store. And so that's exactly what I want to dive in today. Release and receive, like letting go to make space for God's blessings. So if you've ever felt stuck, maybe frustrated, or just unsure of what's next, I think this conversation is going to be a great conversation for you to tune into. But before we dive in, let me introduce our guest today, who I am just, I'm really convinced that she might just be a long lost sister, because you guys, on our very first call, we discovered we have a lot in common. Well, one, we of course realized that we have this just deep love for Jesus, and we also equally love Mexican food. But here is where I about lost it. I was like, okay, are you kidding me right now? Because most importantly, her favorite movie, believe it or not, is also Tommy Boy. If you guys didn't know, this is one of my favorite of all time movies. Sometimes I don't even tell people that because, it's kind of it's a funny movie, but it is my favorite movie. It's Stephanie's favorite movie. So we're just instantly friends there. So anyway, in all seriousness, Stephanie Martino is an incredible speaker. She's a mindset coach and a woman on a mission to help others conquer fear and step into their God-given purpose. So with over 27 years in corporate leadership and a heart for faith-centered living, she has helped so many women shift their perspective from life is happening to me to God is working for me. And what I love most, the words release and receive actually came to her in a dream. And this is how this dream that she's had completely transformed how she approaches life, faith, and even the hardest seasons. So she's here to share how surrendering our plans makes room for God's better plans. And I have a feeling this conversation is not only going to be powerful, but it's also going to be freeing. I absolutely believe that. So, Stephanie, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Me too. And, and maybe a little Tommy Boy reference will be, come in the conversation now and then. I'm super
I
happy to find someone else that thinks that's their favorite movie.
I love
I
it.
love
I
it.
love it. I welcome all the Tommy Boy movie quotes anytime. Yeah, I was just like, this is like as I was reading your bio and then we got on the phone, I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
Like, where are you from? We need to connect in person, maybe have a movie session night. Like,
Absolutely. With Mexican food.
absolutely. Tacos every day, all day, every day. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I love this topic that we're going to talk about. It relates to me in my own story and in journey. And like I said before, I really think it's going to resonate with the women on the call, or not on the call, the women listening to the podcast today. So like I said, you give us a little bit first of just kind of your background, and then how, letting go for you, how that showed up in your life, where you maybe struggled to release that fear of control or expectations, and really what happened in your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. No, thank you. So my background is in corporate. You mentioned that 27 years. And I just always figured I would be, in corporate America.
Hmm.
But as we know, sometimes God has other plans.
Sure.
And I'm very thankful for that, but it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
But I got married pretty young. I was 19 when I first got married. And at that time, a lot of my friends were also getting married young. I don't know what was in the water at that point in time,
Yeah.
back in the early 90s. But a few years into our marriage, my husband and I decided, well, it's time to have a baby. So I went off the pill, started trying, and it was a several months and nothing was happening. And so I was like, well, this is kind of strange, because I just thought, well, I'll just get pregnant, no problem. And at that time, people didn't really talk about infertility. It wasn't as well, the awareness wasn't out there like it is today.
Right.
And anyone who had been through it didn't really share. The only thing I knew about infertility was that if someone had twins or triplets, then people were like, oh, they must have gone through
Yeah.
infertility treatments, right?
Right.
Yes. So at this point, nothing was happening. And so I thought, well, let's just go to the doctor. We'll go to the fertility specialist. They'll just do whatever and I'll get pregnant. No problem. So went through a few rounds of treatments. Anyone's ever been through that, that the hormones make you crazy. Gosh, I remember one time sitting at work, and I was the receptionist at this particular time. And the boss, his office was right behind me. And something happened, and he came out and said something to me. And he was kind of a stern guy. I mean, not super, friendly guy. And so, however
Yeah.
he said it, just hit me in a way. I started crying. He did not know what to do with me. He's like, oh my God. He brings me a box of Kleenex, and I'm like, it's okay. It's just my hormones, right? So, funny story about that. Anyway, so over these months of going through the treatments and trying, and every month it was like this cycle of hope and grief, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I was miserable, really. I was like, I don't understand why this is happening to me. Again, I didn't know of anyone else that this had happened to. And at the same time, my family, friends, they were getting pregnant, popping babies out, no problem.
Right.
And so it was really hard every time there was a baby shower or Mother's Day. Anything that was a reminder to me that I was not a mom was very, very difficult. And so I just kept holding on to this expectation that I was supposed to have a child. Like, that's what you do. You get married
Right.
and you have babies.
Right.
This is just what you do. God created us, for this to happen.
Right.
So why wouldn't this happen for me? And I just, again, held on to that expectation and that idea with what I call like a death grip. Like, this has to happen. And if it doesn't, I don't know what my life is going to be. Like, what's the point of my life if I can't be a mom?
Right.
And so over the years of going through this, it was years of just trying, and then other things were happening, and kind of it would get put on the back burner, but it was still always there. But there was no sign of anything happening. So I started changing my prayers from, God, please let me get pregnant this month. Please let it happen. All these different things, making deals and bargains, right, with God.
Right.
I started shifting my prayers more to like, God, I don't understand why this isn't happening. But if for some reason it's not in your will for me to have a child of my own, then please help me to accept that. Yeah. And that took me praying that over and over and over again. Yeah. But as I did, God helped me for sure. I know he helped me accept it, but it also allowed me to open my mind to a potential new future that I had not considered. Because again, my future that I envisioned for my life was that I was going to be a mom. There was no other option, right? And so as I started surrendering this to God, releasing this to God, I was able to start seeing a different perspective, different ideas, a different future, different possibilities for me. And that I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, I would say that was definitely my first experience of this whole idea of releasing and receiving. When I was able to release this expectation that I was holding on to and receive a new possibility, new perspective, it was like a huge weight just lifted off of me. Because up to this point, I was just miserable. I was cried so much, it was awful. So that was really my first time of experiencing that. And again, I didn't know really what was going on at the time,
Yeah.
But I think that was such a pivotal moment for me that now I look back and I can see the
Mm-hmm.
impact of being able to surrender something that I thought I should have.
Have. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
I love that because you're right. I mean, it's really just reframing our mind, which is really hard to do when we're wired for expecting, all the time, expecting, visioning, okay, it should look like this and it should be like this. And when we don't receive that, we're like, and I don't know if you said this, but maybe I hear that in my own spirit. It's like if it doesn't look like this, or if I don't receive it like this, then what's wrong with me? Like,
Oh,
why am
yes.
I not receiving this like
Hmm.
everybody else is? And I guess you kind of alluded to that, like with the baby showers, everybody else is getting pregnant. Why? Something must be wrong with me, and we attach this our own worth of it's just me.
Yeah.
And so I love how you reframe that and saying, okay, Lord, if this is not, maybe there's something greater, right? That you have planned for me. And so if it's your will, then let me surrender that to you.
Yeah.
So I love that just
Hmm.
reframing it. And so I guess when you did that, I know on our initial conversation and some of our talks, we talked a lot about purpose. And I know that's something that we'll talk about later that you get in with helping women with that. And so I know you talk a lot about discovering our God given purpose. And I think so many times women, especially, high achieving women that I work with, we define our success in terms of achievement and accolades and getting here. And maybe that little bit of that expecting, like if I can just work harder, then I'll get here and I'll expect this and this and this. Um, so I think so many times we often, define our success in those kind of terms. But how do we shift our mindset to recognizing, true purpose and really what is purpose and what is it not? And I'm just curious in this whole letting go and receiving maybe how, purpose showed up for you as well.
Hmm. Yeah. I think one of the most Googled questions of all time is, why am I here?
Yes.
So, this idea of, why are we here on earth? What is the purpose of
Yep.
my life? I think is something that we all question deep
Mm-hmm.
down inside us. And we're always, I think, looking again subconsciously, maybe it's not even, we don't even realize we're doing it, but we're always looking for something to fill
Yes.
that fulfillment, I guess you could
Yes.
say, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times, as you mentioned, we will tie our purpose to the things we achieve, a role that we play. And
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of women say that, their purpose is to be a mom.
Right.
And while absolutely that is an important role, that in itself, just saying I'm a mom is not a purpose, because what does that mean?
Right.
More so, what type of mom are you? That's
Mm-hmm.
where the purpose can come in. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just about a job, a role. Um, People, a lot of times, I've seen this, and I even got into this myself when I was in corporate. We can tie our purpose to our career,
Right.
the thing that we do, what we're known for. How many times when you're at a networking thing, the first thing you introduce yourself with is what you do,
What do you do?
right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of really who you are and
Right.
your purpose, it's like, well, I'm a this, I'm a that, right? I work for this company. And so we label ourselves these things that are just roles or activities that we engage in life. And
Right.
so purpose is not those things. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I always say to really help bring this home is, if your purpose is your job, let's say, what happens if you lose your job?
Yeah.
Now you've lost your purpose? No,
Right.
because
No.
purpose is something so much greater. It's about who we are and how we show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So over my years of really trying to figure out, what I was supposed to be when I grew up.
Yeah.
I really didn't figure it out till I was like 40. It took me a long time. But I was on this long journey to just figure out, what is it that I'm meant to do in
Mm-hmm.
life? And, like I said, my background's in corporate. I had a good job. I worked with great people. I was successful, in terms of that. But
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like there was something else. Like there was
Yeah,
something more that I was
for
meant to
sure.
do, but I had no idea what. And so over years, again, it takes, I don't know why everything is years with me, but I guess that is the way it works for all of us.
It's a journey. Life is a journey. It just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it just doesn't.
God's still working on my patience. And I'm
Oh, me too, girl.
so years of praying about this, searching, looking into things that maybe I could do. At one point, I even considered opening a doggy daycare because I love dogs, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, that could be great. Well, the more I researched that, the more I was like, forget it. Then no, that's not for me. I just want to play with the dogs. I don't want to manage the doggy daycare.
Right.
All right. And then, through all of the personality assessments and career assessments and all these things, I was just trying to figure it out. And I really never got a clear answer. The only thing I could say that I knew I was meant to do was to help people. But that's such a broad description that was not clear enough.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until God brought someone into my life, kind of very randomly. I was working out at the local gym. I was like in this boot camp, and another gal joined the boot camp. And so we just got to talking, kind of became, friendly. And she told me about something, an idea that had come to her about being a warrior of hope for people. And I was like, wow, I really like that. How can we be a warrior of hope for ourselves, hold on to hope, even in those challenging times, but then how can we help other people to hold on to that hope by sharing our stories, right? And so as I started talking to her and we started really building up this, it ended up being a business that we started. As we started building this, it started becoming more clear to me how I was meant to help people. Right. And it comes down to this idea of how am I encouraging people to find the things in their lives that God has already placed there that now they can use to serve others, to make a positive impact in the world, but at the same time, they're being fulfilled. So through that, for me, I came down to kind of 4 components of really discovering what your purpose is. And one of those is values, truly understanding what your values are. I don't think probably most of us haven't really done the hard work to look at that and to really explain what our values are. What does it feel like when we don't live in alignment with that, right? So what are your values? What are the strengths that you have? Both, God-given that you just naturally are good at, as well as skills that you've developed. And then just, your character strengths, how you show up in life. What are those? And again, I find that most people have a hard time identifying their strengths because a lot of times we take it for granted. We're just like, well, that's just what I do.
100%.
Right? Mm-hmm. So values, strengths, passions. What is it that just fires you up? Like when you are doing this thing or engaging in this activity, you're just getting energy. Time flies, right? So that to me is something like we are born with this, that God put this in us. Yeah. And then the last thing is our life experiences. Mm-hmm. We go through things. We are all going to go through things. And I truly don't believe God wants those to be wasted. It's just life. We're going to go through bad times. We're going to go through hard times. But how can we grow through that for ourselves? And then how can we use that to then connect with other people? So when you really think about those things, what are your values? What are you good at? What are you passionate about? And what have you been through? How do those come together to inform a greater purpose that you can live out in all areas of your life, not just your job, not just in your family life, not just a role, right? But how do you show up in life to make a positive impact using these things that God has already given you?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Beautifully said, because I think if anybody is listening, I mean, I was there, just like you were saying, Stephanie, I think we get so caught up in the purpose is being a mom, or our purpose is in our job, and our purpose can be in our job. I'm not saying it can't be, but for so long I felt the same way. Like I am just a project manager, right? I am just an event manager. Like what else could I possibly do? Like I'm so burnt out in this job, but what else could I do? This is the only thing I'm good at. And I love how you broke that down, because if you are burned out and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, go back to what Stephanie just said. Well, what are your values? Are you living in those? What are values, right? And What are your strengths? What are you absolutely okay? If you're good at being a project manager, what about being a project manager? What
Mhm.
are those actual skill sets, right? Being super organized, detailed, great at communication, right? What are those skill sets? What are the things that actually fire you up? Like, does it really crossing off a good to-do list fire you up? Didn't for me. So I love that, and the life experiencing, and which is also your suffering too.
Mhm.
I mean, those hard moments of our life, when you're in the thick of it, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Stephanie, like when you're in those moments of infertility, you can't possibly be thinking, I know you eventually did, but in those moments, it's sometimes so hard to say, okay, this is happening for me. This is
Mhm.
happening for me. This is a reason. This is happening for me. It's so hard, right? When you're in these hard moments of suffering to think that way, but actually, God has a plan. He
Yeah.
always does. And He will use what I have found in my own story, those painful moments of suffering, and turn it all for good. He will reveal purpose through life experiences, suffering, passions, strengths, our values. I mean, all of that, what you just said was so good. So I guess a question I have for you, somebody listening that is maybe in that hard spot, maybe they are just like you that are in this season of infertility. I mean, what advice do you have for them to start doing some of what you've just outlined? I mean, how do they go about figuring out the their purpose and finding these values and strengths? Is there things that you recommend
Mhm.
or things that you did in that time?
Yeah. Um, they're probably not going to like the answer.
We
Yeah,
want things quick and fast, don't we?
there's no magic pill.
Right.
Sorry. But what I found that I think it comes down to is making the choice
Mm.
to look for the learning.
Yeah.
Um, like again, like that statement, is life happening to you or is life happening for you?
Yeah.
I always say life is happening, period. There are things we have zero control over. I had zero control over, obviously, my infertility. I mean, even I was trying to control it, wasn't working.
Right.
So things happen in life, whether we choose to look at it as something that's happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're like, okay, poor me. Life never goes my way. This sucks. Why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. There's that viewpoint. There's also the viewpoint that totally acknowledges, yeah, this sucks. I don't like it one bit.
Yes.
But what can I learn from
Mm-hmm.
this? How
Mm-hmm.
can I grow from this? I don't want to waste this pain.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
we're going
Right.
to go through pain. We might as well not waste it.
Yeah, don't sit in it.
Yeah. So, what can I learn? So, I think at first is making that intentional shift
Mm-hmm.
in that thought, right?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I do believe praying and asking God to help you see, what is it that this could be trying to teach me? What is
Mm.
this? Why, maybe it's not even why am I going through this? Maybe it's just because it's life.
Yeah,
Like, life just happens sometimes.
that's right.
But what, God, can you teach me through this? What is it that maybe you're trying to work out of my life, right?
Right.
So there's always something for it. And I don't know. I'm a firm believer, if God wants to work something out of your life, He's going to work it out. And I don't want to have to go through it 10 times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would like to learn quickly
Yes.
and get the lesson and then move on.
That's right.
Right. Mhm.
Oh man.
So it's
I
really,
love
it's
that.
that choice. Mhm.
Yes, it is a choice. And I love that. And I have I call her my spiritual mentor. And the two things that she always says is when I come to her and I'm asking these questions of like, what is going on? And she'll always say, well, I would reframe it this way, there's no surprise to God, right? So
Mhm.
God, this is no surprise to you, right? He knows everything. So this is no surprise to you, God. So where are you in this?
Mhm.
And then just wait and see, what the Holy Spirit brings up in you. Where are you in this? And He will show you what's happening. He won't maybe always give us that perfect step by step of how here's what's going to happen next week, and then after that it's going to be like this. But He'll give you some peace or
Yes,
comfort around that.
absolutely. And
And
that,
that
well, I'm glad you said that, because the peace that we can gain from God, from the peace that God gives us. There is no other peace like that.
Right.
Right. We can
Right.
try to find peace through life. Sometimes we think we're finding peace by trying to control things. That may
Oh,
give
yeah.
us a sense of peace. But true peace is when, it's something God provides, that even when chaos is going on around us and things are hard and we don't understand, we can still have that peace because we know God is watching out. Like you said, he's not surprised by this. And
Yes.
if I allow this, he will use this for my good. I can be resistant.
Yes.
I don't think God's going
That's
to
right.
whack us over the head and like force us, rustle us down, right? To make us,
Right.
we have to participate in the process.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's so good, and that leads me to a great segue because I wanted to talk about the power of our why. And when we talk about peace, when things get rattled, right? When we're in that state of confusion where we feel like things are just, I don't understand this. I think there's a great place to go back to, and that is, okay, what is my why? Why, especially as an entrepreneur, I feel like things can be chaotic at times. And I can get sidebarred and I can go into all these different, like, well, what about her? And look at this and get comparison and all these things. And I think the best thing I can do when I get in those frazzled moments is I go back to my purpose and then I go back to my why,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And so I think a why is a foundational piece for people to understand. I think sometimes it's the most complex for people to really grasp. So I want your opinion on that as well. What do you think about understanding, your why and how that can maybe fuel motivation, how that can bring peace to your life? And why do you think so many people struggle to find clarity in their why, and how can they maybe start uncovering that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. This is an excellent question because it's one that I think pertains to everyone. Again,
Mm-hmm.
we may not actually ask ourselves this, but I think deep down we want to
Wondering.
know.
Yeah.
For me, what I've experienced in understanding my why, and again, I really relate that's my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like my purpose, the way I describe it, is that I help women and people, right, that
Yeah.
look at life from this lens of learning and growth by
Mm-hmm.
shifting that perspective from life's happening to me to life's happening for me. Right. So
Yep.
that's how I would describe my purpose. And that comes
Yeah.
from a variety of things like values, strengths, life experiences, and
Exactly.
things of that nature. And I can show up in all areas of my life with that purpose. It's not
Mm-hmm.
tied. I'm fortunate also that it is very much linked to what I get to do as a coach and a speaker. But even if I
Yes.
wasn't,
Yes.
I still believe that is the purpose that God has put on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So when I know that, and I always make this distinction between I can know something and I can know something. When we
Yes.
just know something through knowledge, it's like, well, that makes sense. But
Right.
if we don't feel it in our
I
heart,
know that I know.
sometimes
Yeah.
we have a hard time doing it. So when you know it, that's where I feel like we gain the confidence to keep
Yes.
going when it's hard. Um, if I was not confident in this purpose, I would have probably quit
Totally.
being a
Right.
coach, right, and having this business that I have a long time ago because it's hard. It's a whole different ball game having your own business than working for a corporation,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Um, and I think maybe most entrepreneurs, you don't, for at least for me, I didn't get into having my own business for the purpose of running a business. I did it so I can live out my purpose and help people.
That's right. The heart behind it, right?
Right.
Right.
But that business side is still necessary. And that for me is where a lot of the hard stuff comes on. And that's
Same.
where I have gotten very discouraged,
Yep.
at various times. And it's like, well, why is this happening? Why this isn't working out? Or, all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought has crossed my mind multiple times. Well, maybe I should just go back to a job.
Let me just go back to the job.
But then I'm like, no, I feel like God has, at least for right now in my life, this is what I feel like God is asking me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I truly feel that, it gives me that confidence and that courage
Yeah.
to keep going
Yes.
despite the disappointment, despite the fear, despite
Yes.
the I don't see how this is going to work out. But I
Exactly.
know God knows. And
Mhm.
so that, again, that's one of the biggest benefits, I guess I could say, to really understanding your purpose is it gives you that confidence and that courage to show up as you feel like you are meant to, because it's so
Right.
easy in life to modify who we are, to
Mhm.
fit in with the crowd, to try to be like someone else.
Yep.
It's so easy to do that.
Yeah.
And knowing your purpose doesn't eliminate that, but it makes it easier for you to follow what you feel like God is asking you to do
Yeah.
and the person he wants you to be.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. And it is so tied to this knowing in your heart. And I don't know how many times where I've been just like you. It's like the business side and all these other things. Like, I just want to go out and help people. Like,
Yeah.
why does everything else have to be so hard? Or I'm just gonna throw in the towel. Or does anybody care? There's been so many things through my
Yeah.
journey. And like, do I do the podcast? Do I not? And I don't know about you, but I feel like every time, it's like a heart check and God just like
Yeah.
really like speaks to the heart and it's like, oh yeah. Or he'll bring some random person along, right? Or some random opportunity that I'm like, well, where the heck did that come from? Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's there to just remind me that no, I need to stay on the path, quit looking side to side and everybody else just keep on the path that I've promised you. Um, so I love that. And
Mhm.
and knowing your why does. It redirects when you have those times when you're trying to look everywhere but up and in with God.
Mhm.
It keeps you in your lane. It keeps you forward thinking and straight focused to say, okay, I don't need to worry about anybody else but God.
Mhm.
And so I'm so much like you. I'm a contributor by nature, a helper, enabler, not in a bad way. I'm just like, I bring like motivation to others.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it was like in that journey of like really sitting my butt down and figuring out what else what else, God, do you want me to do? What is my purpose? I know it's not to be in this crazy 24/7 project management role where I'm stressed and not present with my family, but what else,
Mhm.
And it was in those moments where it was diving into exactly what you said and it's like landing on my why was, I am a contributor. My why in life is to contribute to the success of others. Like hands down, like I want to just help others and how I do that goes back to what you were saying, like your strengths. How do I contribute to other people? Well, I bring clear and relatable experiences, communication. So I make things very clear and relatable so that they can find it in their own journey. And then, trust is just a big thing. So how I do that is just developing a relationship of trust to say, our journeys may not be the same, but I promise you I've walked a similar journey and I just want to help you get through it faster, right? And I think that's what God wants all of us to do is just
Yes.
help others through relationships and life experiences. Um, so
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And I know you share about your own life experiences as well.
Hmm.
So, again, that
Yeah.
just goes further to this idea that our life experiences shape us into who we are largely.
Yeah.
And when we can use those to then help other people, that I believe God wants that. I wanted
Absolutely.
to mention something else too. So, what I found at times when coaching people on discovering their purpose is that they can tend to think like, "Oh my gosh, it's got to be this big
Big.
thing,"
Yeah.
and then they can get discouraged because, "Oh no, I don't think I have a big story, or I don't have this big platform." And I just want to like set that straight, that is not what
Hmm.
having a purpose means.
Yeah.
I believe that when you are clear on your purpose, you can live that even as like a project manager, right?
Hmm.
As someone who is in a job, you don't have to go out and start your own business.
A hundred
Some
percent.
people he asks that of, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of situation you and I are in.
Fill
But
in.
that's not
Yep.
going to be the case for everyone. When
Exactly.
when you know who you are and what you have to offer, right?
Hmm.
I believe that helps you show up in a way, even in just your daily life, on your job, in a way that brings something special and unique that makes an impact on the people you are working with. They see something special in you
Yes.
they're like, what? Something's different
I
because
got to
this
get
person's not
curious.
just coming in and,
Hmm.
here I'm at work again. That's right. I've done that several times. If only I understood my purpose back when I was in corporate.
Then,
Um,
right? Hmm.
but knowing, your purpose can help you show up in a more impactful way in just your normal daily life. And then you start feeling more fulfilled because you're not just going to work. You're going
Yes.
to work with intention and with purpose, and you get filled up as you are filling other people up. So I just wanted to mention
A
that because that is
hundred.
something I do hear often. People get like overwhelmed thinking it's
They
got to be
do,
something.
and they think it's, it has to be something super super big and glorious, and it is glorious in God's eyes. Everything is, but yeah, I had a girl come up to me one time, and one of the questions that I asked through this event that I was hosting was, what's holding you back from truly stepping boldly into your calling and discovering the purpose that God has for you? Like, what's holding you back from staying stuck in this routine pattern that you keep having? And the response was, I'm just super afraid that, like he's going to call me to something that is just, I'm not going to be comfortable in. And I was like, and then she referenced, she's like, I mean, I could never get on stage and speak in front of 300 people. And I said, exactly. And God would never call you to that because he knows you. He
Mm-hmm.
knows that is not where he wants that you would excel in. He may push you on some boundaries, personally, to get out of that comfort zone, but he will never ask you to go do something where he knows that that's not in the lane. He will always
Absolutely.
align it with your natural gifts that he's naturally already, before you're born, equipped you with. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I love that you brought that up because I think it's important for people that are listening to know that it's already, your purpose is already within you. It's
Yeah.
just taking that time. I'm a firm believer of finding time for stillness. That's the only way that I was able to navigate my journey. And I do believe that's our only way to truly, not maybe only way, but God will be a lot clearer if you take time to actually spend time with him and get clear and ask him, these questions of, purpose and your strengths and what am I good at? What do I love, God? Just taking that time to just journal and reflect.
Yeah. Right. And
So.
then just trying to be patient as he is showing you.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Patience.
Do we have to?
My husband and I, we talk about this word often, and my husband is, oh, he's growing tremendously. He really is in patience. But I always think it's so funny because he prays for that often. And I always tell him, I said, be careful what you're praying for. So you're asking God for patience. Well, the way that I have found that God works is if you're praying for patience, he will give you experiences to grow in that. So
Mm-hmm.
we're like, please give us patience with our kids. And then we wonder why our kids are like doing all these things that are like
Yeah.
helping us practice our patience. Like,
Right.
I'm like, because God's like, he's helping us to grow and walk that
Yeah.
out. And he's like,
Mhm.
oh, he's like, so how should I pray then?
Right. Right. Choose your words carefully. Right.
But so I think, no, I think it's a great topic because I think there has been so many times where I feel like I have been waiting and waiting, right? There has been seasons where I have just felt completely stuck. We've talked about a little bit of that where I'm like, okay, God, I feel like you've called me to this, but why is nothing moving? Like I just feel stuck, or I feel like this is just a huge setback. I feel
Mhm.
like are you even listening to me, God? I've said those things like, do you even hear me? And so, you've been open, like, and laughing with me. We both struggle with this sometimes of patience, but, talk about, if we go back to your, infertility story and your journey with that, like how did that experience and shape, your faith and just understanding, God's timing, either in that situation or maybe other times in your
Mhm.
life where you've experienced something where it's caused you to just be patient and wait on God's timing
Mhm.
versus
Yeah.
control it in your own way.
I think the infertility experience is something that I look back on now as an
Mm.
encouragement and a reminder to me that there can be something different than what I think it should be.
Yeah.
Because again, I had this expectation life should be like this. And I went through this experience of being shifting that. And now I see like all these different opportunities that I've had in my life And I've loved my life. I've had a great life. I've gotten to do some really cool things. And
Yeah.
and I also love that I'm able to connect with other women who are going through infertility, and that I can be
Right.
open and and let them know, like, hey, yeah, I hated Mother's Day too. I
Yep.
hated it. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
guilty because I hated it. And
Mm.
so all these things, no, I didn't
In
have
the
anyone
cycle. Yeah.
to speak into me that way, because again, it wasn't really talked about. So that's something I look back on as this experience that reminds me of how I can also release things today and receive
Yes.
something new.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
more recent experience that I had just this past year is, again, in my business. If anyone has ever started a business, then I'm sure they can relate to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
It
And
is.
especially when, I'm doing it, I'm a business of one, I'm doing it
Mm-hmm.
everything myself and learning as I go, stumbling, failing, doubts, all these things. And worry and fear are very real feelings
Yep.
that come up, as they do in many areas of life.
Yep.
And there was one morning that I was reading my, devotionals, in the Bible plan, and then I have a book that I write prayers in. And that particular morning, one of the scriptures that I read, it's in John, and I can't remember the exact one, but it says something about, my peace I leave with you, and the peace I give is a peace the world cannot give. So we've talked
Mm.
about this a little bit already today, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, right, yes, you give peace that I can't find elsewhere. So first of all, that hit me. And then as I was writing in my prayer book, and I was just, I was lamenting, like, oh dear God, why?
Yep.
I've been using that word a lot lately. It sounds better than complaining. I don't know.
Yeah. I like it.
So I was lamenting on all these different things and not understanding why things weren't happening, from like a financial perspective and all these
Mm-hmm.
different things. And I said in there, this verse reminded me that I have been seeking peace through other things. I've been seeking peace. I would have peace, God, if you would just allow this to happen. That would give me peace. So I wasn't seeking peace through him. I was seeking peace through a scenario, a circumstance.
Right. Right. Right.
And I said, I realized that I've been doing that, and I know that is not truly where real peace comes from.
Yes.
So, God, I release my worries to you. I
Mm-hmm.
release my fear to you, and I receive your peace in return. And by doing so, that will allow me to live into the calling you have placed on my life. And when
Yeah.
I wrote those words, it was just like, but honestly, it,
Mm.
it felt like, again, a weight lifted off of me by
Yeah.
saying, I release it. Now, do I still have fear and worry? Yeah.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I chose, again, this choice to release those things to God in exchange for his peace, right?
Yeah.
I use the analogy of, my husband and I, we had a dog named Blue, and we would take him to the little baseball field behind our house to let him run and play, and he would inevitably find a baseball that had been left over. And he would get that baseball and he would not let go. And he would hold on to it, again, with a death grip. My husband and I would like wrestle him to the ground, trying to get him to
Mm-hmm.
release this ball, and he would not. And so here he walks home with this ball, and the only way we could get him to let go is by offering him something better, such as a piece of
Mm-hmm.
meat, right?
Yes.
But he still had to release the ball in order to receive the meat, because he could,
Yeah.
if as long as he was holding on to that ball, he couldn't receive the meat. And
Mm.
that I love
Great
analogies. Like, that
analogy.
is how I live my
Yes. So
life.
good.
That to me is like, yes, as long as I am holding on to this fear, this worry,
Mm.
resentment, bitterness, anger, the list can go on of all these things that we tend to hold on to life. As long as I'm holding on to that, I can't receive things like peace and joy and love and forgiveness. So I have to make that decision to release it, but then I want to replace it with something, right? I want to
Yeah.
replace it with something better. And it is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
But that experience, and then
Mhm.
along with, like, right around that time is when the words release and receive like came to me in a dream, and I was like, what is this? There's something here.
Yeah.
And I truly felt that that was from God. And because I'm a coach, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is something that can be so helpful. I've experienced how much it impacted my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm teaching other people. I'm doing workshops, release and receive
Yeah.
workshops, where we go through this, creating this awareness of what it is we're holding on to.
Yeah.
What comfort are we getting
Mm-hmm.
by holding
Mm-hmm.
on to this thing?
Yeah.
And there's comfort in the familiar. And so we
Right.
know what it's like. I know what it's like to worry. Oh man, it sucks, but I know what to expect. So there's like this weird comfort in it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the idea of letting go of something is scary, because then
Mm-hmm.
now what? I
Right.
don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So through this workshop, we go through this process of creating that awareness, making that intentional decision to release, and feeling that release just in our bodies, and then
Mm.
identifying what is it that we want to receive in its place. And it's been impactful for me. I've seen how it's impacting others. And again, when God gives you something,
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep that to myself. Like,
Right.
this is something that I really feel like he can work in people's lives with, and I'm very blessed,
Yes.
um, and honored that I get to be able to share this with other women. But
Yeah.
that's, again, a very recent experience. But I look back on my fertility journey as a reminder that I've done it before,
Yep.
so
Yep.
I know I can do it again with God's
Right.
help.
Right. I love that, and that's a great segue, because I was going to ask. I was kind of listening to you because I'm thinking every podcast. I love our conversations, but I always want some tips and tools of what people can do, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
practical things. And so, one, I think, writing. You went to the Word and you went to some journaling,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have other people in your life, and you are. It sounds like this is a workshop that you teach as well for
Mm-hmm.
others. So can you just share, Stephanie, a little bit of maybe, if there's other things too that you think that will help people with just this concept of releasing and receiving
Mm-hmm.
that you found in your journey, outside of just the journaling scripture, if there's anything else, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
share a little bit about this workshop, if this is, or your coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Um, with this idea of releasing and receiving, it takes vulnerability and honesty with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things that, again, God has been teaching me that I've had to get very vulnerable and honest with myself about is how my pride shows up. Now, I don't want to admit that I've got pride. That's not pretty. And like, look at me, like, I don't want to admit that, but I have to. And when I do admit it, it actually is freeing. So it's
It is.
scary, but there's also freedom in it. So I say that to encourage people. We don't get the really good things in life without some kind of a sacrifice. And so there's a sacrifice that we have to make by, again, maybe taking our pride down and being like, you know what? This is something I've been struggling with. This is something I'm going to admit, this is holding me back. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make us a bad
Mm-hmm.
person. There's no
No.
shame in it. We're
No.
human and we all do it. We all have these things.
Yeah.
But being able to have that honesty with yourself and admit it, first, maybe it's just to yourself, and
Yep.
God, right? And then if you have that, supportive community, having that discussion with
Sharing
them.
it with others. Yep.
But I would say that's a big, big, big piece of it.
It is.
And again, it all comes back to this idea of like mindset, making the choice to choose how I'm going to view the things that are happening in my life. So that is key. If we don't truly get honest with ourselves, then I feel like we are limiting our ability to then grow.
Yes,
So
100%.
releasing requires, first of all, identifying and be honest what it is we're holding
Yep.
on to.
Mm-hmm.
I do recommend writing it down
Yes.
because we can think things in our mind, but when we get it on paper, there's more clarity.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something just the way we learn, writing it, seeing it, saying it out loud. All of these things make it more real and more powerful. And so I do recommend write it down. I released this. I received this. Write it down. So that way you can go back and read it again and it just reinforces it and reinforces it. So I would
I
say
love
those
that.
are probably the two big things, the
Yeah.
honesty and then writing it down.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
so good. So
Mhm.
you were talking and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yet again." Like God, I'm like, "I know why you're connecting us, God." Like I think Stephanie and I we might need to be accountability partners for each other. Like to catch ourselves when we go through this. But I was at like about a year or two ago, I was at a faith-based women's conference.
Mhm.
And they had a time of like I think after the second day of time of reflection and stuff, and asked you to go and just write and reflect on what was going on. And one of the questions I asked God was, God, what is getting in the way of me of receiving all that you have for me? What is getting in the way, right? And I sat there and I heard plain as day, which I wouldn't have I wouldn't have come up with this, right? And he said, your own sense of pride. And I was like,
Not the answer I wanted.
done. Yes, you are. Okay. Yes, I'm writing it down. So, yes, I
Yes.
mean, we're human, you guys. We're human. And, our pride, whether you want to believe it or not, it will get in your way. And so from that day, again, not in the next day did I fix it, and I'm still haven't fixed it, but I have been conscious about that to
Mhm.
say, you know what? It's so true.
Yep.
If I have this sense of pride, I am limiting myself of receiving all that God wants to give me. I'm holding on to this and he
Mhm.
wants to do so much more, but he can't unless I'm going to open my hands to receive what he wants. And
Absolutely.
that takes vulnerability, just like you
Yeah.
said, and
Yeah.
honesty.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that's good. The other thing I was going to say that you reminded me of was another gal a while ago that I had on my podcast. She was talking about a similar story. And one thing that she had was like she called it her God box, and everything that she was going to release, like she's like, I'm giving it to God.
Mhm.
She had this box and she would actually write it down on like a little post-it or whatever, and she'd fold it up and she'd put it in the God box. And she was
Mhm.
like, it was like that act of actually like putting it in and shutting it and being like, there you go, God, I'm not going back to that, not picking it back up. And she's like, no, again, we're human, so I probably did, but I reminded myself, no, that's in the God box. Like I gave that to him last week. I don't need to
Mhm.
pick that up. He's working on that. And I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
love that.
Yeah.
So that could be
Yeah.
something.
There
But
there is
I
something about like tangible reminders that are
I
really
agree.
helpful.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in the workshop, the release and receive workshop, one of the things that I do is we have a rock and we have a feather. And on the rock, we write what it is that's weighing us down, what it
Mm-hmm.
is we want to release. And then on the feather, a little tag there, what do we want to receive? Because the thing we're holding on to is heavy. The thing we receive is light. And
Oh,
so
that's
these
good.
tangible reminders that we can just put somewhere because we forget, we get back into our just normal daily life routines, all the things,
Oh yeah.
and we so easily forget. So having those tangible reminders is
Mm-hmm.
a great way to just keep it, front of mind to
I
continue to
I
do it.
totally agree.
Mhm.
I That's why I'm a huge advocate of journaling and writing things down,
Mhm.
because there's been so many times in my small little human brain I forget. And it's just amazing to go back. Like I love to pull back, journals from like last year and just
Yeah.
go through it and see what's awesome about it is you can see also how far you've come. That's what I
Mhm.
love about it. Or things back then that felt so hard that God totally transformed in my life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, look at that. Like that is not something I'm, really struggling with right now. He like restored it all. He redeemed everything. So it's good as a reminder because we are so hard on ourselves to think that we're doing anything good in this world. And sometimes it's just your own journaling that you can go back on and be like, wow, I went through that and I conquered that and look how far I've come. Or, I'm still waiting on that and that's okay. Or I forgot about that, but I really still want that.
Yeah,
Let me go back to God on that. So
absolutely.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I do want to mention an offer for anyone that is interested in the Release and Receive workshop. First of all, if you are so I'm in the Chicagoland area,
Hmm.
and I will be holding these workshops again in the area. So I'll give you the link. You can maybe put in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So there's an interest form, basically, if you're interested in being notified when the next one happens. But also, if someone wants this workshop to be brought to their state, right, to their organization, to their community, I'm doing that as well. So I'm already planning some of those events right now, taking them to
Perfect.
other states.
Yes.
And so I'm really excited about that. And it can be really tailored to the audience, but the concept is going to be the same. And having doing this together in a group is very supportive, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes when we do these hard things alone,
Yes.
it can be harder sometimes. And
Yes.
so being in this environment where we're all there, we're
Hmm.
all working on this, we're all trying to get vulnerable with ourselves and we're writing these things down. And that feeling that support from that
Yes.
community is really encouraging and just gives more strength to
Hmm.
being able to do this. So I think that
Yeah.
having the workshop, the in-person workshop, there's great benefit in that as well. So anyway, I'll give you the link you can put in the show notes and would love for anyone to reach out or
Yes.
submit if they're interested in that workshop.
Absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
would love to do that. So I'll include the link there. And also, I know you do the workshops and events. You also do one-to-one coaching too,
Yep,
Stephanie?
I do one-to-one coaching. Again, it's mindset, really
Yeah.
mindset, and shifting that perspective, which I believe mindset is the foundation of pretty much anything. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to coach you on weight loss, but if you're dealing with your mindset when it comes to weight loss, okay, there we go.
Right.
So
Yes.
there's that. I also have a group coaching program called Get Unstuck and Live Your Purpose. So
Love
it
it.
goes through this whole process of where we're holding ourselves back, what are my values, what are my strengths, my passions, my experiences, how can that all come together to inform my greater purpose. And so
Yeah.
all those can be found on my website. And then I also have a women's community, a virtual community called Rooted, and we meet twice a month over Zoom, and it's an opportunity for women to come together and really talk about how are we engaging God's word to help
Hmm.
us as we are going through the challenges of life.
Yeah. So
So
good.
those are just some opportunities. Again, all those can be found on my website.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I encourage everyone listening, please look. I will include all the show notes below, so make sure you click on that. I also want to let you know I am hosting a Made for More Restless Study again. So our first one was earlier this year. It was great, great turnout, great feedback. So I'm hosting that again. It's coming in April, middle of April. It's an 8-week called Made for More Restless Bible Study, and we're uncovering basically that we are made for more. So what does that look like? Going through, our unique story and God's greater plan, our unique gifts, our calling, our life experiences, just what we were talking about today. What are those suffering moments in your life that maybe God is actually doing something through that? And really at the end of the study, what we're uncovering is all of our threads of our life. So our passions, our purpose, our life experiences, the people in our life, the places we've been, and weaving all of those together to kind of build this beautiful map of honestly who we are, right? Just kind of what we open with today. Like that's one of the questions everybody wants to know. So I would also encourage you, there'll be a link in the show notes below to check out the Made for More Bible study if that's something you're interested as well. Totally complimentary. So Stephanie,
So I have,
thank you.
real quick, I have a Tommy Boy reference.
Oh, I love it. Yes, we
Okay,
can't
because
end
as
this
you were
podcast
talking,
without
I
that.
mean, like, we are like so similar. There's so much about like what we talk about and what we love. And so it just reminded me of the scene in Tommy Boy where he meets his soon to be stepbrother.
Yeah.
And he says, brothers don't shake hands, brothers got a hug.
Oh,
So is my hug.
I love it. I love it. We got a hug. Oh man. I love that movie. I love it. I mean, when we first met and then we were talking about it, I think I told you like my oldest son was like, mentioned it, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Mom, I want to watch it." And they had watched it before, but they were younger, so they probably thought it was dumb. So literally, like after that, we watched it again, and they were both cracking up. I'm like, "Yep, I'm training them good. I'm bringing them
That's
back to the good movies. Those were good movies back then. We make crappy
absolutely.
movies right now."
Oh, you're funny.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was so great to connect, and just truly appreciate your wisdom and just love for helping others. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Go out and make it a great day. Remember to be you, love life, and rise up.